My name is Ken Parker, and I'm here because I'm a former Grand Dragon of the KKK and former member of the National Socialist Movement.
I'm Jeff Scoop. I'm the former national director of the National Socialist Movement.
My region was Florida and Georgia, and then when I was in the NSM, I was a regional director. I ran Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, and South Carolina.
The National Socialist Movement is basically the American Nazi Party. It's the largest white nationalist or the largest Nazi organization in the United States.
My name is T.M. Garrett. I'm a former white supremacist, former neo-Nazi, former Islamophobe, former anti-Semite, and European KKK leader.
I was involved in far-right extremism for 27 years, 25 years as the leader of that organization.
Today, I'm a human rights activist speaking out against hate and anti-Semitism.
Before we go into any of it, have you been in a synagogue before?
This is my first time in a synagogue.
A few years ago, neither one of us would have ever thought we'd be in here together in a synagogue. Like, there's no way.
Tonight we're hosting a really important program, bringing in former white supremacists and neo-Nazis into our synagogue to talk about their journey and their journey in the movement and their journey out of the movement. And it's so important that we hear their stories and we understand more about this growing threat of white supremacism and the violent threats that we're seeing that have emerged from that movement. So it's an opportunity to learn and to connect and to hear and to hopefully get tools to think about how we can address these issues going forward in the future.
It is probably unusual for an organization that's named for a famous Nazi hunter, Simon Wiesenthal, to be working with former neo-Nazis. We vet them very carefully. It's a very stringent process to make sure that they really are out of the movement, that they really are formers, that they really are creating change. It is difficult for me to meet them. One of the songs that is still being sung in this country today is 6 million before, 6 million more.
Looking back, there's a lot of moments that I'm ashamed of. Probably too many to name them. Sometimes I'm so far removed from it and I don't want to see that person.
Becoming involved in it, I felt like I was going to stand up for my people. I was going to save America. It was a heroic mission in my mind at the time.
I got out of the Navy. I was going through a rough time in my life trying to find employment, and the economy was doing bad, and I decided to blame my problems on somebody else. And then, like, having the camaraderie from the military, like, you join the movement, it kind of like fills that gap. Like, you feel like you got a brotherhood or something like that. One
of the hardest things about getting out, too, is that you really believe that the world hates you because you've been conditioned that way. I mean, that's what we did as the leader of the party. I helped condition people to feel that way.
I thought the white race was a superior race. Black people were, like a subspecies. Jewish people ran the whole world, and, they were of the synagogue of Satan and all kinds of stupid things like that.
I think the worst thing I've done, I've created monsters. I recruited people, I brought them into that movement, I taught them things, they're still there.
Was there violence within the movement that you saw? Physical violence?
Absolutely.
You always had like the isolated incidences of like lone wolves. It's like what the media and they themselves call themselves, they go out and do something stupid. And every time I would see something like that in the media, I would sit back and I'm like, wow, I hope I never interacted with that person. And then I'd go through my phone records and check my emails, like especially when the whole Dylan Roof thing happened. Man, because I had a very good possibility of like crossing paths with him. So luckily that never happened.
When I was in the movement and we condemned some of the acts of violence that were happening, it's like, okay, you can condemn that, or people would say, well, it wasn't the NSM. It was somebody, that crazy person that did it on their own. And you can only do that, I think, as a human being so long until you finally go like, you know what, we're saying some of those things, or that person was inspired by some of the things, the messaging that we put out there.
You'd have idiots like me and Jeff getting on the media and spouting our rhetoric and everything, and I mean, people saw that and it made them feel certain kinds of ways, and it elicited certain types of emotions, and whether we want to admit it or not, I'm sure violent things happen. I mean, just take Charlottesville, for example.
I don't know if I don't like the word, but I didn't have the courage at the time to leave because my whole entire adult life was spent inside that bubble. My business, everything that I'd ever done was inside that bubble, was inside the movement. Everyone I knew was inside the movement.
One of the things that kept me in the movement longer than I wanted to be in, I think, is because I was so scared about losing the camaraderie and the brotherhood of being in the movement. And then as soon as I got out, it's like I had a huge circle of friends that was more diverse and higher quality of friends.
There's always that fear of rejection. I didn't talk about my past for 10 years because of that. Especially with the Jewish community, I was especially afraid because that's the people I heard most. And it was just a coincidence, destiny, I don't know. Just a couple of weeks before Yom Kippur, I met a rabbi at an interfaith event. I'm very active in the interfaith community. I approached him and I said, I'm exploring the Jewish community. I would like to attend the Kol Nidre service. And I went home and I realized, oh, wait a minute. I didn't tell him a certain thing. And I texted him, you may want to look me up. And after 2 days, finally, he replied, let's talk, you can come. And I went there on Erev Yom Kippur. I wore a kippah. Thanks for transliteration. I could pray. After the service, somebody walked up to me and said, TM, tell us about anti-Semitism in Germany. And I was so proud that I could tell them Germans have done a great job atoning, reflecting, making sure it must never happen again. I don't think there's a great danger coming from Germans anymore. And I went home. The next day, I turned on my phone and I felt like a liar. A German neo-Nazi had attacked the synagogue in Halle, Germany. I was so proud and felt great. I didn't even think about that I once was on the other side. Then I thought something else. Wait a minute. I looked like a Jew. I prayed like a Jew. I would have been dead. For the very first time, I knew how it feels not to feel safe.
The belief is that when we leave, that society is not going to accept us back, that we're not welcome back into society. And my experience with that has been that the Jewish people are some of the most forgiving and understanding people that I've met, which blew every stereotype I knew out of the water.
There's a lot of feelings. You know, my grandmother fled the Nazis. She fled Nazi Germany and just barely survived the Holocaust. So it's, you know, knowing that there are still Nazis around who would want to do the same things that happened, you know, so many years ago, still today, it's scary. And to see people who, you know, have some of the tattoos, it's a little scary. But on the other hand, these are people who, with great courage, stood up and realized that they were involved in something which was very evil, and have now turned the page and are actively working against that kind of hatred and that kind of ideology, and helping other people to escape the clutches of that movement. And it's so brave and so courageous for them to do so, and it's a great honor for us to host them here in our synagogue.
There was a lot of reasons for me to want to leave, but the final straw was the violence. The violence that was starting to happen, the violence that's since happened, and the violence that's going to continue to happen if we don't combat hate and evil in the correct manner. How can you hate somebody that you don't know? You can't. You shouldn't. It's a blind ideology. And it seems so simple now. So trying to reach those people that are there, that are misguided, and just have a dialogue, like what we're having here today, just talking.
I think I have a responsibility to let everybody know what happened in my life and others like me, and like let people know that you're not alone. Like there's almost like a bigger network of formers than there are of current white supremacists that are worth anything.
I think that their goal really is to try to change what they created. And it's interesting, I can't help but parallel when we have this conversation to the book that Simon Wiesenthal wrote called The Sunflower. And it's a journey where he meets a young Nazi, and the young Nazi is on his deathbed. And he wants Simon to forgive him for what he did. Their journey, as TM says, is really for them to try to say to all of us, I am sorry for what I did. I am sorry for the world that I have created.
Hey, if you like that video, be sure to subscribe to our ABC7 Chicago YouTube channel.